Good evening. Good to see everybody out on this Wednesday evening. We're glad to be back. Appreciate Glenn filling in for me last Wednesday night when we were out of town, and Bert Sunday morning. And I was watching. I was watching. Cameras all over everybody, making sure everybody was here paying attention. So that's a good thing about it. You always tune in most anywhere you're at and check things out. But good to be back. And as we continue tonight on the Beatitudes, it's going to be in Matthew chapter 5. That's where we'll be tonight, chapter 5. We'll begin the word of prayer. Tommy Chisholm, would you lead some prayer, please? When it comes to the Beatitudes, they're easy to read, but they're very hard to live. We can read them very quickly and go through them, but when it comes to putting forth in our life, there's where the challenge is for us to try our best to live and do as the Lord has said. We're in verse 5, Matthew 5 and verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Some versions say, blessed are the gentle. Meek or gentle, either one of them works there. Either one will work. And have you ever seen an individual? They had maybe a very large frame about them, tall, a very muscular, just a stout individual. And then you hear them speak, and their voice doesn't match their body frame. You're expecting a very deep, loud voice, but yet their voice is very gentle, very calming when you hear them speak. Well, again, blessed are the meek. And there's an individual who is, you don't expect it from. You don't expect this from the person himself. Or it may be you see a person that you think will be very meek, and after you get to know them, you realize they're mean as an old dog. Again, it can go either way. So we got to be careful that we don't look at the appearance of the individual and think that individual is a meek person, because they may not be. But what we need to do is look at the person's actions, listen to the person, what they're saying, what they're doing, and that's what tells a meek individual what they're about. So Jesus says here, if you want the best, if you want to be blessed, if you want to be happy, be a meek individual. Be a gentle individual. And you'll have the best. And when I say best, he's not talking about the best things on earth. I have this new toy here, this new toy there, and that's not what he's speaking about. There's a lot more to having blessed on this earth, inheriting the earth, than just inheriting things. Because there are a lot of people who have inherited a lot of things, and by no means are they happy? But the word here, meekness, it simply means when a person who is under control, power under control. You can have a river that can get outside its banks and do a lot of damage, or you can dam that thing up and use the power of that river to turn these turbines to make electricity, do a lot of things with that. Power under control. And that's what meekness is all about. Christ, was he powerful? Oh yeah, no doubt. There's nothing beyond his ability, his limit, that he could not do. But he was under control. His power was under control. Proverbs 15 verse 1 talks about meekness. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. It's all about how you say something. If you use a meek manner about yourself, well then you can turn away wrath. You can do that. Turn it away. Proverbs 25:15, by long forbearance a ruler is persuaded, and a gentle tongue breaks a bone. So here's an individual, long forbearance, a person who is persistent and using their voice, their tone in the right way, they can get a lot done. A gentle tongue can break the bone. It can do that. So a soft answer of a meek person, you're going to get a lot accomplished. But if you go the other way, a harsh word, you're going to stir up a lot of anger. You're going to stir up a hornet's nest, and it's not going to go so well. Christ is our ultimate example of what it's like to be a meek individual, to have your power under control. He's the example that we go to. And the day that last week that he entered into Jerusalem for that last time, he showed his meekness when he entered in. Let's say it's January 20th. It's inauguration day for our nation. And everybody's, here comes the president. He's been sworn in, and he's walking down Pennsylvania Avenue. If the weather's right, he can walk. If it's not, maybe he's in the big limousine or whatever. How he's riding in. That's what you expect from him to do. To be, in that vehicle, or Secret Service around him, and they're running beside the vehicle, or if he's walking, they're all around, and that's what you expect. Christ, when he entered into Jerusalem, he didn't enter in riding a major horse, maybe a big Clydesdale, and it all decked out. He didn't come in on some big chariot, and the apostles or disciples running along beside him, making sure nobody interfered with his entrance. He came in on a colt, a donkey. That's what he came in on. A sign of meekness. And we see this in Luke 19:35 and 36. Then they brought him, that would be the colt, to Jesus. And they threw their clothes on the colt, and they set Jesus on him. And as he went, many spread their clothes on the road. Christ practiced what he preached. He preached meekness. He preached gentleness. And this is what he was doing. If he had come in Jerusalem in some big chariot or a horse or some kind of contraption that men were carrying him on, and he was sort of waving at everybody as inside this, contraption he's being carried in on, that wouldn't have been a sign of meekness. But here Christ is showing, here's what a meek individual does. He humbles himself. His power is under control. So a person may say that I'm a meek person. Well, that's good. But you don't know it until you see their actions, until you hear the words, before you know it. Now, the ultimate example of Christ showing his meekness is when he was on the cross. Or maybe as he was carrying the cross as well. Because the streets were lined and people were watching. And those, as he was carrying the cross, they were probably yelling some insults at him. We certainly know that happened when he was put on the cross. As he was on the cross, they were yelling insults at him. If you be the Son of God, come down from there. And everything else, they were mocking him at that time. And what would we do? What do we do when somebody's pretty rough to us? When they may be yelling an insult. May not be yelling at us, but just give us an insult. What do we want to do? What do we sometimes do? We let them have it back. What they say may be a lie. We're going to tell them, this is a lie, what you're saying. But you don't find that in Christ. Of all that was taking place, the insults that were coming his way, not one time did one foul word come from his mouth. 1 Peter 2, 21 through 23. For to this you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps, who committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth, who when he was reviled did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously. No foul words came out of his mouth when he was being cursed at. Nothing. And all that suffering that he was going through. Sometimes people don't handle suffering very well. And they're not a good patient. And they get to really hurt, and sometimes things are said that shouldn't be said. And we understand that. But not Christ. In the worst moment of his life on this earth, no words came forth that were hurtful. That was retaliation. None of that happened. And he's our example. And Peter's writing this. And Peter had to learn from this. Of all the apostles, of the 12 apostles, I always look at Peter as being the one that had the worst temper problem. He couldn't keep his mouth shut. He was constantly putting his foot in his mouth. He had to learn meekness. And Christ was teaching him this. And for Peter to write this, and for the ultimate individual here to see this and write this, showing that Peter learned something. It took him a while. It just didn't happen overnight. But it took him a while, and all the times we see in the Scriptures where Peter opened his mouth and said things he shouldn't have said. But it's tough to be a meek individual. Difficult. It does not mean you're a weak individual. But it does not mean you're a wimpy individual. You can say things in the right way and get somebody's attention and do it in a very meek way. You don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be loud about it. You don't have to get in their face. But how you use words, what you say, a meek individual can get the attention of somebody and get it very quickly. Even with soft words, it can be done. So we don't want to stand back and just take it when somebody's beating up on us, you might say. Christ, he didn't say a word, anything that did him damage. And we need to be meek individuals, but there may be times when we need to talk. When we do, we get the attention. Say them in the right word, right way. In Matthew 11, 29 and 30, Christ says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. You will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Christ says when we find ourselves in a situation, look at him. The word yoke here means the kind you put on oxen, but it's also meaning a double yoke. You have 2 oxen. So when we find ourselves in a situation where I don't know if I want to be meek or not, Christ says, look at me. I'm right here beside you. Look at me, what I did. Look how I handle this. I'll give you rest, he says. My yoke is easy. My burden is light. Look at him. That's what he's telling us to do. So if we're yoked up to Christ, hopefully we're not going to lose control. We're going to look at him for our example. And then that's where he comes back and says, "Blessed are the meek," if we will do that. Now, on the cross, of course, when Christ was being ridiculed, he didn't lash out at him. He didn't do that. But there were times when he was accused of things that he spoke up. You know, a meek person, as we said, they can speak, but you got to speak in the right manner. Look what they were saying about John the Baptist and also about Christ. Matthew 11, 18, and 19. He's saying this before he's talking about the yoke. Look at him. Here's what he says. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and a winebibber, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is justified by her children. When they accused him of being a glutton, a winebibber, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, Christ answered them. He answered them in the right way. He didn't get mad because they were calling him a glutton. He didn't get mad at them because they were calling him a drunk or being a friend to individuals that everybody else had sort of pushed aside. He answered them. And he said, look at me, what I'm doing. Look at me. He could have spent his entire ministry, dealing with this character assassination. He could have. But he realized, I have greater things to do. They're going to say these things anyway. He answered some, and some he didn't answer, because he knew that they didn't want to answer whatsoever. So he did that. If we're going to be the Christians that the Lord wants us to be, we've got to be different from the world. And that's what the Beatitude is about, being different, acting in a meek way. Colossians 3, 12 and 13. Therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, put on tender mercies, kindness, humility, meekness, long-suffering, bearing with one another, and forgiving one another. If anyone has a complaint against another, even as Christ forgave you, so also you also must do. We got to act different from the world. That's what the Beatitude is about. The Romans didn't do it. The Romans didn't have any meekness about them. They would come in and force you to do something. The Jewish leaders didn't have any meekness about them. You look at us, you follow us. Do as I say, not as I do, of course. There's no meekness there. So Christ is showing here we're to be different from the world. And be content in how Christ tells us to act. Do that. Matthew 6:25. Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. It's not life more than food, and the body more than clothing. Well, the Lord said, the meek shall inherit the earth. I'm supposed to have all this. Well, look at the great things I'm supposed to have. That's not what he's talking about again. He's telling us here that he's going to provide for us. And the things that we're going to inherit from this earth are things that somewhat different. Take, for example, blessings. The blessings of having a non-worry life. Now, that's hard to do. We worry about a lot of things, but if we are meek, we're not going to cause a lot of trouble of things around us, and we're going to have less worry in our life. That's why we go back to Matthew 5:5, for they shall inherit the earth. Would you rather have say a $10,000 mattress or a good night's sleep? Which one would you rather have? There's a lot of advertisements out there about mattresses, and some of them, they guarantee you a good night's sleep. Don't believe that. You could pay thousands of dollars for a mattress that jumps around upside down, puts you in every position possible, and tell you you'll have a great night's sleep. You get on that, ever how many thousands of dollars it will be, and you got worry, you're not going to sleep a wink. And you're going to get mad at that manufacturer who told you, oh, this is it. This is the mattress that you need. Being a meek individual will help you get a good night's sleep. I mean, you lay down, you head down maybe, and you go right off to sleep. Never how many hours you need, you wake up feeling pretty good about yourself and refreshed. But, sometimes the little worry can jump in bed with us, and it can cause a lot of damage. There are a lot of people that could have the best food available, the most expensive. But yet because the worry has ulcerated their stomach, they can't eat it. Can't eat it at all. It's like old Howard Hughes. In those final years of his life, he could have had anything he wanted. But if you know anything about his final years, he couldn't eat anything. Sort of confined himself in a room and couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Somebody's always after him, trying to kill him, take what he had. I don't want to swap places with that individual. By no means. So a meek individual is going to be given blessings by God that the world doesn't understand. We're going to have plenty to eat. We're going to have clothing on our back. We're going to be in a dry place. The Lord guarantees it. And that for a meek individual, what a blessing that is. So you might ask yourself, how do I know if I'm meek? Well, it's not found in the way you dress. It's not found in the way that you do really anything. It's about your heart. It's about your attitude. If we have the right attitude, then that's how I know if I'm a meek individual. That's how I know. Philippians 4 and verse 5 says, let your gentleness be known to all men. The Lord is at hand. Gentleness, your meekness, let it be known. You don't let it be known by going out here and telling folks I'm a meek person. You missed it there. But by your actions, you're letting it be known that you are a gentle person by the way you're acting. Am I surrendering to the Lord's will? Am I surrendering to His thoughts? Am I surrendering to His actions? Like that. The Lord's will. And it's not something you just do once. These Beatitudes, it's an ongoing way of life. That's what it's about. In 1997, we had our first, I might say, official school shooting that took place. It happened in Kentucky. A man by the name of Michael Carnell opened fire on a prayer group inside the school. 3 were killed, 5 more were injured. One girl that was injured, her name was Missy Jenkins, and she was paralyzed by one of the bullets that he shot. And the rest of her life will be spent in a wheelchair. She'll never walk again. And she was interviewed after she got recovered. She was interviewed by all the major networks and everybody else. They wanted to talk to her. How does she feel about this individual that shot her, and about her future in her life? And here's what she said. She said, I feel sorry for Michael. That's the one that did the shooting. Unlike him, I cannot go on with my life. I lost several friends. I still have many friends supporting me every day. I'm not mad at him. I forgive him. It must be a terrible way to carry a grudge in your heart. The last thing I pray for each day is to walk again. Sure, I want to walk again, but it has helped me to understand much about life. My mother is in a wheelchair due to MS. I now understand that. I will never stop believing in God. He will help me through every situation I face. And that was pretty much her comment on one program. That's how she ended about every interview. You know, she's not holding a grudge against anyone, anything. She's going to use that to make the most of the matter. And there's a meek individual, a gentle individual. Could harsh out and say some terrible things, but so are we willing to surrender our will over to God? Let Christ be our example. And if we will, we're going to inherit the earth, the best that this life has to offer. That's what we're going to inherit. And it's not talking about things. It's talking about a good night's rest, talking about having a loving, caring attitude for others. All that goes with that. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Any comment on that beatitude? A meek person? All right, next week we'll go to the next one, where the next one is. I think it's hunger and thirst for righteousness. I believe that's it. That's where we'll be next week.